And let's start. So, bonjour and welcome to a new aiLights session. Today we are sending live from Lausanne, where the AMLD are happening right now, the Applied Machine Learning Days. And I'm very happy to welcome Mara Bertamini from Supertext. Hi, Mara.
Hello.
Great to have you here. Mara is the COO of Supertext, and we were just talking about being a nerd. And she writes on her LinkedIn profile that she is a true language nerd with a master's degree in computational linguistics focused on multilingual text analysis, right? I hope that was correct, Mara.
That is indeed correct.
Yeah, okay, nice. So last year, Supertext supported us during the Swiss AI Weeks by providing their API for the hackers for the 15 hackathons we ran. And that API lets you integrate translation and text recognition features to websites and programs. And we all are today here and joined the session to learn more about model customization and how to move LLMs from generic to genius. And some notes before, this session is being streamed as always on YouTube and LinkedIn. And you are invited to drop your questions in the chat, and we are trying to answer them during the session or maybe in the Q&A part. And we will have an additional 10 minutes networking part where you can stay around and asking for test users, collabs, or whatever you are looking for. So now let's start the session, Mara. The stage is yours.
Thanks a lot, Sabine. So, trying to get the right screen. Yeah. Okay. Is the screen visible to everyone? Great. Excellent. Warm welcome from my side as well, and thanks a lot for the warm introduction. I'm really happy to be here with so many of you and showing maybe a slightly other perspective on how to move LLMs from generic to genius. I always like to start presentations like these with a question to see a bit, to grasp the, let's say, the room's feeling. And my question is, who's a bit tired of the ongoing AI hype in this virtual room here? I see one hand. I assume there might be some other hands. That's just my take. I talk a lot to people about AI, right? And sometimes I feel, people are also a bit tired of this AI hype. And maybe to give you my perspective on this, haha, surprised, I am a bit tired of this AI hype, and I'm going to tell you why. I actually started working and implementing AI back in 2018. Kicked off my career at Swiss Life. That's a large insurance company in Switzerland, based in Zurich. And there I had the pleasure and the honor to introduce a customized AI translation tool for company-wide usage. And it was 2018. The product I actually implemented there back in the time was called Text Shuttle AI Translation. Believe me, no one gave something about this AI in this product title. People didn't know what it was, what to expect about it. Eventually we had to take it out from the internal product name because people wouldn't get it. They were like, this is not a good marketing strategy to roll this tool out. And I mean, okay, it's some years ago, but still like not too long ago. That's why I'm a bit tired sometimes because, well, people have been implementing, training, developing AI models long before ChatGPT and the like. And just to give you a bit more of a hint where I come from, I was very happy to replicate this very good use case, replicating AI translation tools for other translation departments, for other companies. A Text Shuttle, that was back in 2022. You can see some company logos that might look familiar below. And yeah, eventually, as Sabine said, Text Shuttle and the former Supertext Translation Agency joined forces back in 2024 because, well, translation is not a solved problem, even though we have powerful technology nowadays, even though there are LLMs, but moving them exactly from generic to genius takes a bit more than just a couple of tech bros. That's how I see it. And I would really like to give you, let's say, an overview of all the ingredients that it really needs to implement LLMs from, let's say, to have them mature from the beginning to a more mature state that they really can deliver value that can then ultimately be transformed into real business value. That said, enough about me. Yeah, I think that's the title of the presentation, right? That's what you're getting from me, obviously. But what you're also getting in today's talk is why it's simply not enough to move an LLM from generic to genius to achieve real business value, right? This might sound a bit like a platitude, I know, but I see into many companies, I talk to many people, and believe me, sometimes people really think, especially in towards C-level positions, they think it's enough to have a good model, a powerful model that can fulfill wonders. Well, it's actually not. But later, we'll talk more about that later on. Now, let's focus on model customization, because this is really the core piece that we need to master to actually get, well, a step ahead. Let's call it that way. What we want, what we do at Supertext is we implement retrieval augmented generation. This is this famous RAG acronym. I try to explain it in a simple way. You can use RAG, this mechanism or this concept for a lot of things, right? Translation is just one use case, and it's a very good use case because it's very specific. It's a very specific task. And thus, that means you can actually tailor the model with RAG to do a very specific task. That is, translate in a genius manner. That means translate in a specific company's tone of voice, in a specific company's corporate language. And how that works is, well, it all starts with data, right? This hasn't changed. We usually start with semi-large to very large translation memories from customers. Let's assume you already aggregated a lot of existing translation data over the past 10 years. You have parallel text, German to French, German to Italian, whatever you need to run a successful business in Switzerland and beyond. You give us this data, and what we do then is we aggregate them. We make them machine readable. We put them into our filtering pipeline, because obviously there are faulty texts in large data sets, right? This is normal. You can have misalignments. You can have a source text or a source segment that is exactly the same as the target. This is not what you want to have in there in the translation memory, because it's bad for the machine, for the system, the LLM in this case. And we want to prevent the LLM to learn something that is actually wrong, because we want it to perform on a very high level. We want to perform it better than generic. We want to perform it on a genius level. And that's why we need to apply this filtering pipeline. As you can see, the green icons or the green components, they are developed and maintained by Supertext. And you might ask yourself, well, can I not do this on my own? Maybe with a tech team or so. Well, you can. You will see when the whole process is listed here on the slides. We don't do this for fun. This is just because it's so very difficult to train these LLMs with RAG to perform on a very high level, and that's why it takes more components to be developed in-house by a tech company. Just to sum it up a bit, why we need that. So maybe if we go back, I said companies trust us with their translation memory data. We filter this translation memory. We filter out all the faulty segments, maybe old segments, whatever. And then what we do is we make the translation memory data machine readable. We need to store them, all the existing translations, we need to store them in a database, but this database consists of numbers, not of words. And so what we do is we calculate and we index vectors. We put all the existing translations into vectors and store these vectors in the database. I'm not going into detail here because I don't want to lose people in the details, in the mathematical details here. But just try to imagine that we sort of zip all the translation memory data to a format that is much, much more economic and takes much, much less storage size at the end of the day. That's what we do in the beginning. And that's already it. This is like already a genius LLM, because what happens now is the following. If a user from this company that the translation memory belongs to enters a new text for translation in a given interface, for example, what we do is we calculate again a vector, this time for this new text that we want to have translated. So again, we do the same thing. We zip this text into a more economic format, into numbers, and we put it into this retrieval pipeline. This is another component that we develop in-house. And what this component does here, it ranks existing translations that it founds in the database. So for a given text here that we get from the user, the retrieval pipeline actually checks with the database, hey, do we have existing translations that are that come very close to this text here? Because obviously we want to retrieve them, right? We want to grasp and we want to get the corporate language that is in there, in this database, in the translation memory of this given company. So this retrieval pipeline extracts all the existing translations that it finds relevant for this given text, and it ranks them. You can see that here it's like a 1, 2, 3 icon. This is on purpose. We want to give the machine as much information as possible, but we want to give it the right information. And that's why we rank this. And the retrieval pipeline does this very important job of saying, hey, this given translation here is much more important than this translation there. Nevertheless, the translation there, the secondary one, could also be beneficial to generate a good translation. Don't worry, if you can't follow me here fully, I have brought an example, of course, later on in the slides, but I would like to give you just a big overview of the many components that we have here in the process of bringing an LLM to genius state. So that said, we have a new text that we want to translate. We have put it into a machine readable format. We have retrieved all the existing translations that we actually want to have. Then we enter into the next step. We ask our next component, and that is the very core, that is our translation LLM, our large language model that takes care of translation itself, of the task. What we do with this component here, we include the most important segments into this prompt here. So all the retrieved segments that we think are relevant, they are composed into a prompt. And this is not a tech colleague of mine writing a prompt as we know it from ChatGPT or the like. This goes via API. This is all standardized. It's always the same. It always goes in the same manner how we instruct this translation LLM. So this is basically just the instruction. And the instruction tells the LLM, hey, please take this text here, translate it to a given language, and use these translations here, these existing translations, as a reference. And that is enough for the translation LLM to generate a translation that is very similar to the translation memory, that is much closer to the corporate language of this user's company, and is therefore, let's say, at least close to genius, but much better than a generic LLM could perform. just because it has the data, the reference data at the end of the day available when it comes to generate these translations. So now, I know this is a bit abstract, and that's why we're going into an example, because I think that helps a lot to understand this process of bringing LLMs to genius state. So imagine the source text that a user wants to put into an LLM that he wants to have translated would be something like this: financial sentence. This is simplified, of course. You can put in many paragraphs, many documents in once into an LLM. For simplification reasons, I stuck to one example here. And then what we do exactly during translation, we look into our translation memory. We have a translation memory from German into English. And what we do here is, as I said, we want to instruct the LLM to use existing examples to generate a genius translation. And how we do that is, well, we don't match the translation memory to 100%. So we not only look for let's say fully overlap, for the full overlap. We don't just check whether the source text as a whole is already in the translation memory, but we also look for partial matches. And here in this example, as you can see highlighted in green, we find a partial match, this phrase here, if you want, in our existing translation memory. That means we give this information to the LLM into the prompt, into the instruction, saying, please translate. And then what we get is a specialized, a genius translation, if you want. You can see that here, because the English equivalent for this German part of the sentence was actually here, balance sheet for all seasons. This was respected when the specialized translation was actually generated. This is just one method or one way to use RAG in AI translation, in modern LLM translation. This is how we do it at Supertext. There are different technical possibilities, of course, but it has proven in the translation case, which is, as I said, a very specific case or problem, if you want to phrase it like that. This has to be proven very, very useful, very efficient, and that's why we stick to this. I'm taking a short break and I look into the virtual plenary here. Is this in general understandable? Does this make sense? Or do we have any pressing conceptual questions on how LLMs are fine-tuned? Sabine, I hope it's okay to make this point here, to not lose people.
Definitely.
I just have a question. My name is Jerome. I'm working for a company that produce machine. So it's very interesting because we are building more or less the same as you do at Supertext, and we look into many type of LLMs. We know that there are very large LLMs. What is your point of view in the case you presented with the RAG and the pipeline? Are very large LLMs more effective for translation compared to much smaller, more specialized LLMs?
Hey, this is a good question. And honestly, I'm not the best person from Supertext to answer this. But what I know from discussions from my engineering colleagues is it's extremely difficult to, and you have to make, it's always a trade-off, right? You can use the largest LLM, which will give you the best quality. But then in terms of compute time and I mean, the resources such a big LLM needs, this is another thing. So what we want to find always is the optimum. We want to have the best LLM possible, but we also want to, let's say, reduce the time to actually generate the translation at a minimum, because we don't want the user to wait as long as you sometimes have to wait for ChatGPT, for example, to generate an output right? So this is a bit the struggle that we see, or that I think, yeah, in the end, it's a trade-off that you have to make. And I wouldn't say that generally the rule applies that the larger the LLM, the better. I think it depends a lot on what you want to achieve. Does that sound somewhat sensible?
Yes, a lot. You need to find the sweet spot between very big and too small and precise. So this is also the difficulty we have.
Exactly. Yeah. Then welcome to the club. No, but it's actually it's how you say it. It's I think everyone struggles with that, and it's really mastering this to find the sweet spot is what takes real engineering work at the end of the day.
Hi, Mara. May I ask a question too?
Of course, go ahead.
My name is Maxim. I'm a software engineer, and I think my question is somewhat similar to what Jerome just asked, but it kind of extends the question. So there are so many moving parts. Besides the LLM size, you also can change your prompt. You mentioned that generic prompt, and that would affect results tremendously. You could also use a different tokenizers or different embeddings generators available on the market. So there are so many parts that affect the quality of translation. So how you evaluate and assess what is a good translation and what is a not so good translation? What gives you like a feedback so you could improve or at least maintain the same level of quality when you do changes?
Very good question. Thank you. We at Supertext, we are lucky enough, strategically lucky, I should say, to have 20 plus in-house linguists, and they are very, very much integrated or included into the whole process of developing and maintaining this pipeline. Because you're right, there are so many moving parts that you can, or so many parts that you can move a bit, and then maybe it has an effect on translation quality or not. So long story short, we evaluate constantly, and we try to evaluate automatically on the one side, but we always include human language expertise on the other side, because as you might know, automatic metrics, be it blue or whatever, they have blind spots, let's put it that way. It's always good to have language professionals included in your review cycle, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that can actually tell you whether a translation is better than the other one. Of course, we do this in blind testing sets so that people are not biased. But that's generally what we believe is the best way to improve your models or your whole model setup.
Thank you.
Good.
And Mara, just one thought on that, and then you have this huge pool of translators, right? About, I don't know, I read somewhere a figure of 3,000, where you could also easily send out some kind of testing in terms of, hey, this is the text, can you rate somehow, right? And you would have human feedback very easily, right?
Potentially, we could do that. Exactly, that's very right. We haven't done so in, let's say, in the vast majority of cases, because it has been proven to be good if you have linguists on board that also have a basic understanding of how these models work, right? Because you want them to look at very, very specific errors or phenomena in the machine output. And if you have no clue whatsoever of how these models work, then you might look at the wrong angles. But yeah, basically, of course, it's a huge pool, and it's a huge source of knowledge that, in my opinion, is absolutely needed to have a sustainable development of these models in the future. Exactly. Oh, this was an excellent question, Sabine, because this actually allows me to go further on in the presentation, if I may. okay, I told you now we can customize LLMs, we can bring them from generic to genius. Cool. They do obviously outperform standard solutions in real world scenarios, but I would really like to look a bit closer. What are these real world scenarios at all? And how big can the impact of a genius LLM actually be in real time? And I think, well, this is no surprise. The most popular, the most representative example in these real world scenarios is, of course, professional translation, right? And it is very simple because time matters. We do many evaluations, blind evaluations against our competitors, against, as I said, also against older model versions from Supertext ourselves, because we really want to measure what the impact in real world could be. And for example, here, this is a real evaluation that we did against DeepL. Well, I mean, what you can achieve with a genius LLM is something like this, and it doesn't matter, you know, like in the details, it doesn't matter, but two things matter a lot. If you have twice as many sentences or twice as many translations that a translator doesn't need to fix, that doesn't mean he needs to spend zero time on it. Of course, he needs to read and reason whether this is actually right. But if he doesn't need to invest time into fixing these segments, that is a lot of time gained. And the same applies for, let's say, the amount of translations where with a generic LLM, you would need a lot of effort to fix the problems. If this side is also reduced a lot, this can actually have a big impact. And the next slide is not directly related to this slide here. But what you can achieve, actually, this is from another customer of ours, indicative numbers, not absolute, but it's about dimensions, right? If you can save internal translation costs up to 30%, this is not something that you're going to do with a tool like this. And I don't want to bash ChatGPT or similar, or Google Gemini or whatever, but these tools are not genius enough to achieve something like this. And okay, this is money, right? This is a very CFO or a very CFO-y slide, if you want. CFOs like numbers, of course, but this is also time. This corresponds to time that translators can spend on something else, on more important projects. They can spend more time in translations that actually need to be, like, you know, shipped. So time to market can be reduced a lot, and you will never achieve that with a generic system like this, because let's face it, if you have let's say, for example, this is another example. If you have something like this, you want to translate, you have these recurring patterns, right, within every company. And these patterns, of course, they should help people to recognize your company or the spirit of your company, of the services that the company provides. They should be recognized or recognizable in all the texts. If every time you see every time such a recurring pattern occurs, and every time you need to translate such a recurring pattern, you actually need to correct it. Well, you will never gain or you will never actually save on time, right? This is only possible if you really have a genius LLM that can actually bring something like this. And because obviously this is where a lot of my professional learnings come from when it comes to, you know, putting AI systems into production. I want to conclude this first use case with like three main learnings. It's no surprise that Swiss Life, as one of our earliest AI customers, has reached, and this is not an invented number. They did a very specific evaluation of how much time they could actually save with customized AI translation. And this was not only because the model was good, because the LLM was genius. This was also because processes have been unified. Translation LLM has been used for almost every text, not just like, oh yeah, today I feel like using it and tomorrow not. It's like if you have the processes in place and they need to be there, that you can actually achieve such a big impact in practice. This helps a lot, of course. And as I said, consistent use or consistent usage of these LLMs, and to not forget the regular curation of the translation memory as well, right? If new products are introduced, they are reflected in the translation memory. If old products, financial products in this case, if they are retired, the translation LLM might still find them in the translation memory and retrieve them, and in the worst case, also put them into the generated translation. This is something we want to avoid, right? Because we want the LLM to always have the most updated data at hand when it comes to generating new translations. So this, as you can see, having a genius LLM in place is not the only thing that really needs to match to get maximum business impact. And the same also applies now. Professional translation is a very popular case, as I said, but you can also have other cases. For example, you can also use a genius LLM to link two systems to each other that were not able to talk to each other. Because harmonizing data, as it says here, actually pays off. And what I mean by that is, this is also a real example from another client of ours, Their Tour Suisse. They many tour operators under their umbrella brand. And what they faced is this challenge. They had many systems, and here for simplification reasons, let's call it just system 1 and system 2 and the main system. And the goal was that this main system could retrieve information from system 1 and from system 2, and then automatically generate the PDF for customers, be it an offering or an order confirmation, for example, a travel itinerary, whatever. Now, this might sound easy. Well, it is actually not that easy, because if you imagine that in one system you have mixed source input, for example, here, destination Naples in English, then you have a hotel name that should probably not be translated, and then you have a host message, for example, in Italian in this case. Maybe this should be translated because, not everyone speaks Italian, right? And you deliberately go to a tour operator because you want to have this whole organization and communication as a service, preferably in your own language. So then the problem is not that easy to solve in the end. So, as I said, let's imagine we have a mixed source input system, and then we have another system with monolingual text, like text in brackets. And what we want to do is we want to fill in the information that we find from system 1 into these text brackets in system 2. And these constantly change, right? So there's no point of, investing a lot of money of having them translated professionally or automatically. This is in constant movement. If their tour has a new partner in, I don't know, Hawaii, in a very specific location, this location needs to be put into this system 1 here. So this is in constant movement. And that poses another challenge. So what we can do now is you could say, we can just put all the information or feed back all the information into our main system. And then what we get is something like this. If we don't use AI translation, for example, Ihre Reise nach Naples, you decided for Hotel Lama, and then eine Nachricht Ihres Gastgebers, and then a language change. This doesn't look professional, at least to me it doesn't. I think if I spend a bit more money on my travels, I also want to have an adequate communication. So what we can do now is you can say, okay, we're using AI translation. Let's say we use a generic LLM. We can, for each segment, we can, or for each text that we need to fill in, we can identify the language, in this case, German. We can have it translated to German, in this case, Neapel. Sounds good. Yeah, in this case, absolutely no problem if we use a generic LLM. But well, a generic LLM might translate the Hotel Yama into Hotel Flamme, because that's what it can be translated into as well, right? And since there's not so many high Swiss high German texts compared to Germany texts, it's very likely that the LLM produces an output like this, großartigen Urlaub, where we see we have a very German-specific character and a very German-specific word. This is not something you want to have in a text where people actually pay for your services, right? So if you use a generic LLM, these are the risks that can happen. You can say we ignore them, but if you want to deliver more, then it is wise to stick to a Genius LLM, because the Genius LLM on one side will tell you, hey, the language here that we actually are looking for is German from Switzerland. And please translate with the customized AI system, with the Genius LLM, translate this into the identified language. And then what we have is something like this. Wir wünschen Ihnen wunderbare Ferien. No SZ character as is used in Germany, and also not the word Urlaub, but the word Ferien, which is common in Switzerland. So at the end of the day, with a Genius LLM, you can actually achieve this. And well, this is a very simplified and stupid example, but as I said, there are studies that especially in Switzerland, people are willing to pay more money for services if they are addressed in their own language. Might be one of the oldest things that we know about marketing as well, right? So this can really have an impact. And using a Genius LLM to connect systems to translate between them is actually a good way of maximizing the output that then in the end can have an effect on user choice. So I know I'm almost, I should almost be done, right? So bear with me. I have a couple of slides to round this up. Another thing is, this is also a customer of ours, obviously. You can have a Genius LLM, but it's like tedious to use and it doesn't have a good user experience around it. What we learned with this customer is that you can actually replace an older system, another system with a Genius LLM. But it's not only about the Genius LLM, it needs also to be like embedded in a user-friendly environment that users actually like to work with such an LLM. Jumping a bit forward now, to sum it up, such a journey to getting a Genius LLM always starts with data, and it is your data, so company data, human verified translations, style guides, terminology, and so on. This is all very important and one of the most important ingredients to getting to a Genius LLM. And yeah, as I said, this is at the very core, of course, but it goes beyond that. A Genius LLM will only be able to perform its true power if the data flows are set up in a right way, if the processes are defined and respected, if the interfaces are user-friendly, and at the end of the day, also if your security is in place, right? Only then, only if all these components are secured, defined in a way, then you will have maximum impact. Exactly. So I have talked a lot now and tried to sum it up a bit. I'm sorry if I was a bit late. Sabine, do you think we have time for a couple of questions?
I think so.
Inputs?
Yes, I think so. Maybe a first thought before anybody is asking a question. I found that very interesting. So I knew Supertext for some years, but I never was really clear about what kind of services you are offering. And from a marketing perspective, when I heard about, okay, language translation and so on, then I was thinking, okay, the last media releases, I used Claude or Mistral for French or so, and it worked very well. But when I learned about that, it's about the tone of voice for companies, I don't know, starting maybe at 80 people or so, or corporate level, mid-size level, to really access what is your voice of your company. I found that aspect very interesting. And I think this was also very well explained now in the presentation, Mara. So maybe somebody has some questions to your presentation. You can unmute if you like. Great. Yeah.
This is Jerome again. Sorry to disturb you, but I have a question I wanted to share with the audience. We know that some company don't have a perfect glossary of terminology, etc., etc. So they're sometimes struggling to have all this information somewhere. Regardless of the data, how Supertext rework it. Some companies give you like some Excel sheets with all these glossaries and so. What is a bit your feedback regarding that?
Great question. I have seen PDF glossaries, Word glossaries, Jira glossaries, SharePoint glossaries. We get it. We get everything, and we know perfectly well that we don't live in an ideal world where a glossary is stored either in a terminology database as professional translators use it, or let alone maybe also in, let's say, in an Excel structure. We get it all. What we try is obviously always to apply automatic tools to extract terms. Sometimes if a company doesn't have a glossary at all, what we also do is with automatic tooling, we try to extract relevant terms from a given translation memory. That is also something that you can retrieve in a very fast way. Then you can have translators check it, whether this is actually really a term that should be in a glossary, right? This is a very philosophical question, but there are tools that we make use of. We have to, right? Otherwise, we couldn't deliver on our promise. Okay, thank you. I have a last question, if possible. This is regarding the data, so variety, because we know that data is very important for companies, agencies, etc., etc. And we know that today in this world, it is more than important than ever. How Supertext can ensure that these data are not lost somewhere, etc., etc., in terms of infrastructure? Very good and very important question. Answer number one is we host data on our own servers. So we rent server space and electricity in dedicated server instances in Switzerland, in Zurich actually, but we maintain them ourselves. We want to lower the risk as much as possible that something can happen with these servers, because you're absolutely right. We have many banks, insurances as our clients, and they wouldn't be our clients if we couldn't find a smart solution for that. That is like one thing on the infrastructure side, and on the, let's say, on the technical side, on the setup side, we try to keep data as separate as possible, right? Data needs to be, even if customers come to us and they trust us with their data, we're not going to mix them up. There's also no need, or no, how shall I say that? There's no reason to do that, because we have no advantage if we pull all our customer data together and put it into the LLM, right? Because what we want to have is like an LLM that is tailored and that it looks only at customer data and then not at another customer. So there's like an inherent motivation for us to keep the data apart and to keep it secure on Swiss grounds.
So, any other questions for the moment? If not, I don't think so. If not, I would like to thank you, Mara. And then I'm proposing to switch off the record and the live streaming. So thanks a lot, Mara. So for me, it was very interesting. I hope, yeah, so some messages coming in. I hope for you all as well. So can we share the slides afterwards? I think it's possible, right?
Yeah, we
okay,
can.
Nice. Okay, great. So then I'm wishing you a great day and hopefully see you soon. Next session is on February 18th about AI's new role in finance. And we will have also, because somebody was asking about smaller models, we will have a German session on March 30th with the Professor Masha Kurpic-Briki, difficult name, from the BFA Bern, and she will dive into that topic with the small language models. So hope to see you soon, and bye for now. Let me switch off. So.